So, funnily enough, this week, three different people have made similar comments. And I was just sitting having a cup of tea earlier and I realized this is really worth making a video about. Because I've also received comments on my videos of a similar vein. And the line of thinking is along the lines of if someone is low in mood or miserable or um, just distressed, why can't you just tell them to cheer up because of how good they have it? Like, can't they see how good their life is compared to someone suffering in another country, a poor country? Um, and and I've heard that a lot, and it's come up from three different people this week. And I thought, oh well, that's worth talking about because it's a common response um, that people and caregivers have, and it's a common thing to say. And when you first think about it, it's like, yeah, like, when you have your basic needs met, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the importance of, security and food and water and shelter and that kind of thing, it's like, well, you've got your basic needs. Why can't people just be happy compared to how bad things could be? So it absolutely makes sense to kind of question that. Are you really appreciating what you've got? And this absolutely ties in to a person's ability to be grateful. What is your ability to be grateful for what you've got? Because a lot of us take what we've got for granted. I know I do, and gratitude is the cheapest way to improve happiness. People usually want more things, but actually, if they train to be more grateful, and you measure that in some experimental design, they'll tend to be happier when they're more grateful for what they've already got. But when that's taken a bit too far, when someone's having, depressed mood or emotional dysregulation, or they're feeling miserable, and our natural response to say, oh, can't you just be grateful for what you've got? Like, look how good you've got it. I wanted to talk about why that isn't helpful, and maybe we could explore some ideas on what to do instead. And I'm very interested in hearing your comments and your reflections on how you approach this situation in your life, your personal life, or in your clinical experience if you work in a healthcare facility. Before I go on, I'll just introduce myself for the newbies to the channel. My name's Sil. I'm a junior doctor from Australia. I'm working in mental health. I'm on a psychiatry training program, but these videos are made in a personal capacity. I'm not representing any workplace, and all advice is general in nature. No medical personalized advice is intended, and there's no patient-doctor relationship formed in engaging in this content. So why isn't it helpful? I think fundamentally the issue is if someone is miserable or sad or in pain psychologically, that is an emotion. And essentially, when we're saying, like, cheer up, your life isn't that bad, look at what you've got, what we're doing is we're giving them a thought. So we're giving them a thought to challenge an emotion. And what we're doing is saying that the emotion is not valid or allowed. We're asking the person to disconnect from how you feel because you're feeling the emotion, but you shouldn't. And you should instead feel happy because of how good your life is. This is a bit of an issue, right? Emotions are going to be felt one way or another. If someone is disconnected from their emotions, and it's very common, I've got it personally, sometimes we have our avoidance coping mechanisms. That emotion that is unfelt and unprocessed will manifest in other ways. And it might be ways that are unconscious to you, and it might be ways that are very unhelpful. For example, if I have a difficult interaction at work, let's say I'm feeling self-conscious about the fact that I just shaved all my hair off, and then someone says, "You're ugly, you're bald," whatever. Hopefully that wouldn't get to me too much. But but maybe that was me avoiding it. So you're seeing it in real time, folks. So let's say someone was bullying me, that's a good one. So let's say I had a difficult interaction at work and I felt bullied. Okay, I felt attacked. And I avoided feeling that emotion. And I suppressed it and I said, oh, I can handle it. I'm tough, whatever. I'm not going to engage in that emotion. Let's move on. And then I go and I keep working for the rest of the day. And what might happen if I don't acknowledge and feel the feels, if I'm not being aware of my emotional response to, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like I'm bullied, that hurt. I'm going to let myself feel this tension in my chest. I'm going to acknowledge it, and I can process it in a healthy way. But if I don't kind of do that, so let's talk about what happens when you don't do that, and then we can talk about how to do that in a healthy way. So if I try and avoid that negative emotion, a multitude of things, different things can happen, but usually they're unhelpful. So avoidance is very common. So say it's a colleague that made me feel uncomfortable, then I'm going to try and avoid that colleague. But that's a problem if I need to work with that colleague, right? That's not going to be helpful. Another thing it might happen is that it could come out in another way. So I might get, well, one thing is called somatization. So when you have an emotion that you do not engage with in a conscious, adaptive, helpful way, it can actually manifest physically in other ways, right? It can be felt as a really sore tummy, and a lot of stress, and it is related to IBS and other kind of somatic pain syndromes. A really common one is it can manifest as as displacement. So I might be really upset about, feeling strong emotions about this conflict at work, and then I get home and I get angry at my dog or something. By the way, my dog's amazing. I would not get angry at my dog. I'm just giving examples of, like, if you do not feel an emotion consciously and engage with it in a healthy way, it will manifest in other ways, and sometimes those ways are unconscious and destructive. Fights with partners, aggression, road rage, it's all relevant. So so what do you got to do? So an emotion is there, and emotions are what influence behavior, right? Everything you're doing day to day, all your every word I'm saying right now, it's all guided by motivations and emotions, right? Those are the things that direct your behaviors, that make you flex muscles in such a way that your vocal cords tense, and words come out, and life builds. So it's really important to understand your emotions, because if you don't, then you'll have all these unconscious defense mechanisms that'll guide your life into potentially destructive ways. So we've talked about why not feeling an emotion is potentially risky. Now, why do we avoid emotions? Because they can hurt, because it can be really painful. And it's worth mentioning that suppression, which is saying, I'm not going to feel my emotion right now, but I'm going to put it to one side consciously and address it later, that is called an adaptive defense mechanism. That is considered okay, and not maladaptive or destructive. It's okay to say, so say I'm in a difficult patient interaction and I'm feeling really angry. Obviously, getting angry is not a productive emotion in a therapeutic kind of interaction. So it's okay for me to kind of bottle that in a little bit, and then go to my punching bag in the corner of the room at the end of the day and do a workout and get that kind of anger out in other ways. Now, using negative energy from one interaction and putting it into another interaction, like sport and exercise, that's called sublimation, and what's considered a mature defense mechanism as well. So a helpful, not destructive defense mechanism. So this serves as a bit of an opportunity. It's interesting to think, what defense mechanisms are you guys using that aren't that helpful? The truth is, we're all using a range of different coping mechanisms, and some of them are helpful, some of them aren't. Some of them are conscious and some of them aren't. So really, the most useful way to discover which ones you're using is through therapy, but that's expensive. So you can also just write a journal and have a think about why you're reacting the way you're doing. So that's what happens when you don't feel the emotions. And actually, we talked about how to feel the emotions. So there's suppression and then sublimation, where you suppress your emotion, then use it later on in something else. I think humor is a really good one as well. So use of humor in a healthy way really is a good way to process difficult experiences. And you hear the expression, "If you don't laugh, you'll cry." That's a common expression in my field of work. So humor is a very interesting tool that I want to learn more about. But it can really help people not feel shameful or judged, and it can just it can connect people, and it can make very painful experiences much lighter. It's got to be done with a bit of taste, of course. And altruism is another important defense mechanism as well. So that's the concept that the pain that you've got, you manage by doing good for others. From what I've seen in my kind of brief career as a junior doctor, though, that can also be unhelpful in some ways if it's used as a avoidance mechanism. I think the key thing is you don't want to avoid too much. You want to process. And another helpful way to do that is through meditation and sitting through it and watching yourself from a different perspective, and just observing the sensations in your body as you're processing different difficult interactions you've had. So going back to this approach people have to say, "Oh, can't you see? Like life is so good. Like you've got everything you need. Why are you miserable?" Um, yeah, using that kind of cognition to address a negative emotion is really the main. Usually, the primary issue is that the person who's trying to help doesn't like feeling negative emotion and wants to fix the problem. And hands up, that's been me a lot of times in life. So what's happening for them is that they're trying to terminate the emotion as soon as possible. Look, guys, emotions have got to be felt. So, it can be much more helpful to just say, look, I know you're going through a really difficult time right now. I wish you weren't, and I wish there was something I could do to help. But right now, I'm here and I'm with you. And then you can just sit in silence. You can sit in a bit of misery. It's okay if shit isn't going well. It's okay to be sad. Um, so So obviously there's a line and that needs a clinical assessment when it goes into mental illnesses and disorders. But just in terms of someone having a negative emotion, you don't need to fix it and terminate the emotion straight away. And I think it's worth reflecting, if you're the person that often says, cheer up, things could be better. Why is it so hard to sit in negative emotion for you? Think about that. Because, I don't like sitting in negative emotion, and I've done my own reflections and discussions to figure out why that is the case personally for me. But it's important because it's in that space that you can make some progress and insights. Sometimes in therapy, it does require a crisis to have a change of behavior. Uh, and people kind of, I'm not making generalizations, but in certain situations, people need to kind of discover things for themselves, and that requires being in a crisis. If you're just trying to patch and avoid negative feelings, then what kind of behavior change will you really get if you're always avoiding the reality of how someone's feeling? And I think when someone's going through a hard time, and this isn't a video on how to, psychology first aid or anything, but saying less is more. Letting someone just have the space to feel, to ventilate if they need to talk and let things out, and just saying, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm here. Just simple things like that, really, because a lot of the time when you look at why they're feeling depressed, it's not because of a lack of um, materials. I'm thinking of like an example of, a rich person that has everything they need physically, but is still miserable. Like the needs that are being missed here are emotional needs, the need for attunement and connection. And a lot of, if I'm thinking of like stereotypes of rich people, a lot of the behaviors of accumulating more wealth are with the goal of having a social connection and interaction and validation. It's very social. They're buying material things to fulfill emotional needs by, having their friends say, "Oh, nice Bugatti" or whatever it is. So, you know, using intellect to address that by saying, "Cheer up, you've got everything you need." It's not going to shift that emotion, because what they're needing is a hug. Anyway, I hope that was not too rambly. It was just a thought that came to me while I was having a cup of tea. I hope you guys are all having a beautiful weekend. I was meant to do a live stream today, but I don't know if I'll be able to get around to it because I've been doing lots of renovations. Sorry about that. Anyway, I will next weekend do a live stream. I'm going to get onto live stream, guys. It's going to happen. All right. See you guys in the next video. Bye.